welcome to the second part of our videos, and what I'm going to do is try in 20 minutes at the most to recreate some of the the lecture that I'd hoped to share with you in our class on Thursday night. So I'm just going to take you quickly through the week 3 PowerPoint. This was the massive agenda that we had, and you'll find this PowerPoint is also available online. These were the different things that we were going to do during the class, minus that QR code scavenger hunt. I meant to delete that, but everything else we were going to try and do. So let me take you through a good portion of this. The first thing we were going to try and do is the Mager quiz. Now the Mager quiz is not going to be given until week 5, so we will be doing a 50-point Mager quiz on week 5. Okay. The hybrid week overview, I actually posted a video about that, so I do encourage you, if you're watching this video, go back, watch the hybrid week overview. It really takes you through this Blackboard weekly posting rubric and all of my expectations for the hybrid week. Okay, visualizing the lesson. Okay, Lige, focus on me. Okay, here we go. All right, thinking like a sub. One of the things I'm going to talk to you about really quickly is that as I work with students and they're building lesson plans, students really struggle with putting a lot of detail in their lesson plans. And what happens is I'll sit down with the student and I'll say, okay, talk to me about your lesson plan. Tell me what you want to do. And when they start talking, so many more ideas come out than what is actually on the paper. And I think that takes us back to the idea that writing is hard. And I will tell you as a writer myself that writing is one of the most difficult kinds of work that you can do. So many people really struggle with writing in general, so then writing a lesson plan has an extra difficult element. And over the 10 years that I've been teaching this class, the best way that I've found to get detail out of students is to tell them, imagine a substitute teacher was going to come into your classroom and try and teach it, and you wanted her to say all the things that you had in your head and do all the things that you thought about. What would you have to do? And really, the kind of lesson plan I want you to write is a script. I never want you to say, outline the events of the Civil War. What events would you choose to outline? What kinds of questions would you ask? How would you do that? It's really important that you write with extraordinary detail. I'll tell you, I was absent from work on Thursday when my car was stolen, and my lesson plans that I submitted to myself were about 6 typed pages, single-spaced. So, and that's for a first grade classroom. So, I've been doing this a long time. That's the kind of detail that I'm looking for. A lot of detail, really visualizing step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Say this. Even putting in italics, a feedback loop, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So that's really what I'm looking for, is the kind of detail that you maybe have never even considered before goes into a lesson plan. Okay. All right, next part, backward design. And I'm going to use these 2 images to build for you something that I think is really important. I like to think of backward design, okay, on me, Lige, in terms of the bullseye versus the splatter. What does that mean? A lot of people, when they start doing a lesson plan or they start doing a unit plan, immediately start getting creative. And they'll think, oh, I want to do butterflies, or oh, I know I want to do the American Revolution. And I even had this happen the first night of class, and some people were just not sure, how do I go about doing those things, because I don't even know when it's taught. And really, in teaching, and this comes from a book that you're going to be learning about when you get into your 400 level classes, we use a process called backward design. And that means we're trying not to do a splatter, we're trying to do a bullseye. And let me explain the difference. Okay, focus on the screen. Okay. Right here I have a standard. This is a first grade science standard. And this comes actually from a unit on sky and weather. And it says, identify the tools that might be used to measure temperature, precipitation, cloud cover, and wind. Okay. So my partners and I were sitting down to plan about sky and weather recently, and one of my partners had this great teaching partners had this great idea. She's like, I know, I have on the iPad this really cool app, and the app shows the sun and the stars, and it's awesome. You can hold it up to the sky and you can look around, and I really want to show that app to the kids. I think they would love it. They could do this whole little activity with it. But then when we checked the standard, go ahead, focus on the standard. We discovered that didn't really fit into our job. Our job was not to teach about the stars, even though sky and weather seemed like it would include the stars, but instead to teach about weather tools. So we had to design a whole different activity about getting the kids to write in their science notebook, draw a picture of a barometer, draw a picture of a weather vane, draw a picture of a barometer, and explain what each of those tools did. Totally different lesson from what we initially planned. And because we started with the standard first, we hit a bullseye. And a bullseye means that you've started with the standard so that when you write the lesson, you hit the heart of the standard. A lot of people start getting really creative and start writing that awesome lesson plan all around that Night Sky app, and then they go look for the standard and shoot! It's a splatter. So if you look over here, that's what I mean, like a splatter, like they haven't started with the standard first. So before you get super creative, before you find an app that you fall in love with, before you start shooting an iMovie on fractions, check your standard. Start with the standards first. Find standards that you understand, standards that are meaningful to you, and then you'll be able to hit that bullseye. Okay, next thing. All right, this I thought was really fascinating. A lot of you actually kind of figured this out on your own. We're talking about in this class integrating both the curriculum standards and the technology standards. Well, there are actually two sets of technology standards we're going to be using. We'll start with the METS, Michigan Educational Technology Standards. And guess what? I actually helped write these. I was invited to be on the panel of people who worked on the social studies educational technology standards. I was asked to review them. It was a big honor, and I was very excited to do it. And so I know some of the very esteemed people who worked on these technology standards. These are the standards that Michigan has adopted. They're actually based on these national standards down here, and they're what students need to be able to do. Some of you already found them. If you look, they're on the Michigan State website, and they're actually arranged by grade level bands. So they go like K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and then 9 through 12. And that just means that students working within those grade level bands should be working on those kinds of technology related activities. Now, the second set of standards that we're going to talk about are these guys down here, the NETS, National Educational Technology Standards -T for teachers. Now, these are different standards because these standards are actually about teachers using technology. So in your unit, you can do either or. You can design a lesson where you're having students use technology, or you can design a lesson where you as the teacher are using technology. So that's why you can write a lesson plan about you doing a Prezi or you doing a smart notebook activity, and either of those lessons are going to work because you're going to be integrating technology either with having the students do something or you yourself as a teacher are doing something. So you can Google both of these things, and you can get them right off of my PowerPoint, like I said, under the Week 2 folder. The Week 3 folder, and you can look for the Michigan Educational Technology Standards or the NETS for teachers. Okay, feedback loops. Asking why and how questions. I noticed that some people did attempt to include feedback loops in their lesson plans. Very exciting. A feedback loop is where you actually write into your lesson, the teacher says blah, and the student says blah, and then the student and the teacher talking back to each other. But here's what I notice students don't often do. One of the best things that you can do when you're doing a feedback loop is ask a question that a student's going to get wrong. Really? Yeah. Like look at my example here. Why does the tree, it should say why do trees lose their leaves? I wrote that really fast. Why do trees lose their leaves? Let's think about that for a second. Most students are going to respond with, what do you think, Elijah?
Fall.
Because it's fall and it's cold, right? Okay. He wasn't expecting that question. But that's not actually correct. Trees do not actually lose their leaves just because it's cold. They lose their leaves because there's less hours of daylight. And because the trees use the daylight to make sugar, and they have less hours of daylight in order to complete that process. So one of the things I think about feedback loops is it's really important that you're asking the why and the how questions, and that you allow students, even that you show mistakes, because mistakes are one of the greatest ways that we can help students to really learn. So think carefully when you're including a feedback loop, and don't just ask like simple questions or have the students give this perfect model response, because that's not real world. That's not really what happens. Okay? Lesson planning in the Socratic method. This is a response, something that I promised to include in the lecture. I actually said this to Kelly. And this is Socrates. There he is, Elijah. There's an example of Socrates. So Socrates is a famous philosopher, and here's what Socrates said. He said he could teach anyone anything by just asking them questions. He basically believed that all of us have inside of ourselves knowledge, really the ability to comprehend anything as long as I ask you a really good question. And so if you look at my example of a lesson plan, I actually give you an example of this. And so I talk about how, like, let's say if I did this, and Elijah's actually here with me. Elijah, what's the stock market?
Place where people buy money.
Okay.
No, they invest their money in.
They invest money in it? Okay. Could you tell me a whole lot about the stock market, or do you know like a small amount?
Well, like if you put money in and then the company grows bigger, then you
might get more money back.
You gain money, or
that's pretty good. Many students wouldn't be able to give that kind of response that Elijah gave. They might have really limited knowledge about the stock market, but they might know about stores. So I might start off like this. Instead of saying, tell me everything you know about the stock market, I would say, what are your favorite stores? And then after you told me a little bit about your stores, I might say, well, who owns this store? Do you think one person owns a store? Do you think more than one person owns a store? And as I kind of ask those questions, accessing their prior knowledge and experiences, students would really begin to understand more deeply the concepts that I was using. So the Socratic method is a way of asking questions that accesses your prior knowledge, that forces the student to think through the issues on their own. So I really encourage you to think about, how am I going to include the Socratic method to really get the students thinking and trying to work through and puzzle out the kinds of things that they need to know and understand. Okay, Smart Notebook. This is actually a lesson that I taught using Smart Notebook. It's on YouTube, and you can go ahead and click it, and you can see my whole lesson, and it's an example of Smart Notebook and how Smart Notebook can be used in a classroom. So I will be putting, like I said, the week 3 lecture in the week 3 folder. You can access this. You can watch my Smart Notebook example if you want. But really, the second half of the class, what I had hoped to do, and this is something that's part of the online activities this week, is go to Smart Notebook and have you check some things out. So you don't have to watch my example of a Smart Notebook lesson I made myself. You can watch it if you want it, if you pull up the week 3 folder. But what I'm looking for you to do is use the Smart Exchange, which is the online forum where teachers post Smartboard activities, and find something that inspires you in your unit. So that was the second half of class and what I had planned to do. So, and I really wanted to give you a chance to explore the Smartboard, and we'll be doing a little bit of that on week 5. Smart, I did, like I said in the email that I sent, I encourage you to download Smart Notebook. Be aware that it's only a 30-day trial, and that if you want to have access to your Smart Notebook lesson after that, you're going to have to upload it to Smart Exchange, and it takes about 24 hours for it to be approved by Smart Exchange once it's been uploaded. And that is pretty much it for my lecture. So I thank you. Thanks to Elijah for his help in videotaping, and thanks for listening. And I hope this was a helpful, quick recap of all the things that I had hoped to say in class on Thursday. Thanks.